Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of The Edge on IC Radio, your source for news and entertainment. You can find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, and Abundance Television, which is found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. Monday through Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. Central. It's always fun, so much fun to be with you. You know, we're in a world right now, we're hearing bad news all the time, so sometimes I just want to report something really neat. Maybe past heroes. And so I found one. And this is a lady. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and show you a picture of her. This is her right here. Beautiful, beautiful lady. Now, this is back in the 1800s. Her name was Susan Anderson. And she was the first female doctor of Cripple Creek. And I wanted to show you another picture before we actually get started. So this picture right here is with two visitors. This is her with two visitors, and this is at her cabin in Fraser. Now the man on the left, they think might be her father, William. So we're going to talk about her and some of the wonderful things that she did. But before we do that, let's go into this really quick video.
Are you the doctor?
Yes, ma'am. I just need a moment to think. Thank you, Doctor.
So can you imagine you're living back in the pioneer days? Things were hard enough as it was, but you decide, you're a woman first of all, and you decide to choose a career where there are basically no women in this career, okay? You're living out in the prairie, you're living out in the frontier. I mean, rough life, okay? Nothing, no conveniences, no electricity, nothing like what we are used to having. These are your true American heroes right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about her. She lived in a town called Cripple Creek. Now, the picture I was letting you see just a few minutes ago was her with two visitors at her cabin in Fraser. And again, we think the man on the left may have been her father, William. But let's go ahead and talk about her. This is an article that was actually written by Jen McKell Collins. And I just love research. I love history. And so I love giving you true stories of history, not fabricated stuff. Nothing that's going to fit the times we're living in right now, but like the real stuff. And this just really fascinated me. So her name was Susan Anderson. She was born in 1870 in Indiana. This is when her parents divorced, by the way, which is something really unusual back in the day. Her parents divorced in 1875. So Susan's father, William, took custody of Susan and her younger brother, John. Now, by the early 1880s, the family had moved to a farm near Wichita, Kansas. Living on the farm proved beneficial for Susan's later career as a physician. She learned to doctor the animals around the homestead. So Susan's early knowledge of animal message, combined with her father's encouragement to pursue a career in the medical field, seemed to set her future in stone. So it's all of those little experiences we have. We wonder, why are we experiencing this? A lot of those little weird experiences we have, we say, God, why are we going through this? What's the deal? It actually gets us ready for something better that we wouldn't be able to handle if we hadn't experienced those things. So, but little did Susan realize her determination to become a physician would be challenged in several ways. But before we get to that, let's talk about professional careers. They didn't come easy, by the way, back in those, especially to women of the 19th century. So if she did not become a housewife, a woman's choice of vocation ranged from a cleaning woman, maybe to a cook, from laundress to maybe a waitress. So the few women who were provided a college education could aspire to the position of a clerk or a nurse. For most, however, professional positions were out of reach, so Dr. H. Susan Anderson, MD, was a true exception to this rule. Aren't we happy to have someone like that who actually paved the way? And there, by the way, there are some books that are written about her as well, so you need to check those out. Go to your whatever your favorite search engine is. So let's dig in a little bit about her fascinating life. So, in 1990, William Anderson, the dad, remarried a woman named Minnie, who appears to have been jealous of her new stepchildren. Oh my goodness, Cinderella all over again. Far from being prepared for a ready-made family, Minnie already had 2 children and conceived at least 2 more by William. Now, in her eyes, only her natural children counted as family. Minnie ignored and mistreated Susan and her brother John at every turn, letting them know that they were not wanted. It's nothing worse than being a child not feeling wanted. This abuse continued through the siblings' graduation from Wichita High School, which was also an unusual accomplishment, finishing high school. She finished high school in 1890. Okay, 2 years later, the family moved to Berry, later known as Anaconda. This is in the Cripple Creek district of Colorado. The family first resided in a modest home south of the schoolhouse, and William purchased mining interests. This was Dad. It was decided that Susan and John would attend college, serving 2 purposes. Further education would broaden the teens' minds while getting them out of Minnie's way. Wound up being a blessing in disguise. Imagine you have this crazy stepmother, or it could be some people have their own mother who's crazy, and so they're looking for ways to get away anyway. This wound up being an awesome thing for Susan and for the people of the town. Okay, so Susan left to study medicine in the University of Michigan in 1893. So Cripple Creek at that time had 8 physicians. By the following year, the figure had doubled. So Susan planned to open shop in Cripple Creek upon graduation, but despite her good grades and aspirations, Susan received shattering news midway through her studies. Her father, influenced by the undermining Minnie, was cutting off financial support. Then what was she going to do now? This is back in the day where women didn't have careers, okay? I mean, they were a wife, they were, which is awesome. They were raising kids, all those things. But as far as a career, and then have your dad cut it off the financial support, that was wreaking havoc. Whoa, what an evil stepmother this person was. Undaunted, Susan borrowed money from a classmate to continue her studies. John also began working his way through school. This is brother John. With a relationship with her father at a standstill, Susan decided to find her mother. Yeah, you're wondering about, they get a divorce a long time ago, so you wonder about the mother. Now, a lot of times people going through divorces, they want to badmouth the former spouse. They want to badmouth the dad or the mother, which is a wrong thing to do. You should never, ever do that. Okay, never. So let's go in the story. I find this really fascinating, don't you? A lot of us have a parallel with a life like this one. Okay, so with a relationship with her father, she decided to find her mother. Her mother's name was Maria Pyle Anderson, but she had remarried. But her heart had been forever broken by William's sudden departure with the children some years before. During the reunion with her mother, Susan learned her powerful father had divorced Myra quite abruptly with little explanation. There's always 2 stories, or always 2 sides to a story. Susan vowed to remain in touch with Maya the rest of her life. Susan's father was furious when he heard the news, insisting that Susan cut ties with Maya. Okay, this is with him cutting ties and cutting off her financial support for going to college. So when she graduated from medical school in 1897, none of her family attended. To complicate matters further, Susan had also contracted tuberculosis during her internship. Still, she remained optimistic. We talk about that a lot, remaining optimistic. We have things that hit our lives. I mean, it causes us to go around in a whirlwind. What are we going to do? This is just terrible. We have to work at staying positive. Now, this story is for myself as much as it is for you, okay? So let's dig a little bit more. Okay, A letter to her brother John reveals, one of my instructors will be 12 miles from Cripple Creek this summer, and I expect to see him sometimes perhaps. So following graduation, Susan returned to Cripple Creek, where she lived with her grandparents. Her relationship with her father was still strained. Now, John was in California, and Susan's friends were few. She set up shop in suite number 3 of the bimetallic block of the corner of 2nd Street and Bennett Avenue. Now, by then, 55 other physicians and 10 dentists were also calling Cripple Creek home. That's hard to say. Cripple Creek. Say it 3 times, bitch. So, being the only female physician in town, it had to be difficult. I mean, you had all those guys. You're a woman. Shouldn't you be, like, pregnant at home, raising kids? Her biography notes Dr. Anderson was concerned about the prostitutes working 1 block south on Myers Avenue. Many were infested with drug and alcohol-related illnesses. Yeah, there was drug and alcohol back then, too. Venereal disease and infections from back alley abortions. Because of her unusual status as a female doctor, it can be assumed that Susan's premier clientele consisted of many Meyer individual residents. Naturally, the pay was poor, and she received no financial support from her father. In a letter to John, her brother, she wrote, "It makes me feel hard and bitter and sour when I have to go in old shabby clothes and scrimp and save and board off Grandma and Grandpa. Meanwhile, Minnie and her children used William's money freely." What a father he must have been. Let's go ahead and go into a commercial break, and we're going to be right back in just a few minutes. Y'all hang in there. The Hatter Cafe and Country Inn is nestled in the northeast corner of Alabama the Beautiful in the delightful town of Mentone. We're located on top of scenic Lookout Mountain near Little River and DeSoto State Park, and located only 5 minutes from shopping and restaurants. There is also a nearby community walking path and golf course. We welcome everyone through the doors, and we are committed to outstanding service for all guests. At the Hatter Cafe and Country Inn, we invite people from all walks of life to come and get away from it all, enjoy the open spaces, treetop views, fresh, clean air, and experience Southern hospitality at its finest. We look forward to hosting you. To reserve a special event, or if you would love a special getaway at the Country Inn, you can call us at 256-634-2018.
Are you ready?
We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer.
Yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
The only place I buy my beef is Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama. Their cattle is born and raised on their ranch, grass and grain fed, and you can feel confident when you serve your family and friends because their beef is all natural and no antibiotics or hormones are added. You can buy whole beef or perhaps go in with family or friends and buy half. Their customer service is number one as they take care of the delivery to their local processor and can deliver to your home for a small added fee. They also offer herd replacement heifers. I always call Lone Tree Ranch in Collinsville, Alabama for my beef specialty recipes and cookouts, and you can too. Food shortages are increasing, so buy local by calling 256-523-6462. That's 256-523-6462.
Wow, it's so soft and smooth.
It's cool to the touch. How did you do that?
Well, we took MyPillow's patented fill and combined it with this new technology that we didn't have back then when I invented MyPillow to bring you the best pillow in history, MyPillow 2.0. Because of all of you, My Pillow 2.0 has been a huge success, and now we're bringing you our best-selling Go Anywhere My Pillows with the same temperature regulating technology. Made with my patented adjustable fill and brand new cooling fabric, they're truly the next generation of My Pillow. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save over 60% on our My Pillow 2.0 4-pack special. You'll get 2 My Pillows and 2 Go Anywhere My Pillows, regular $259.92, now only $99.98. King size just $10 more. This is a limited time offer, so please order now.
Donna's Designs offers a line of handmade memorial, wedding, and keepsake jewelry that launched back in 1970. I'm a self-trained jewelry designer, and I will work closely with you to create unique designs you can love and treasure for years to come. Whether that be flowers that were used in a funeral arrangement or stones you found on the beach at a memorable trip, call me at 256-659-4319, and let's think of the possibilities.
At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. Okay, we're back. We are talking about an awesome lady. Her name was Dr. Susan Anderson. She was the first female doctor of Cripple Creek. So we're talking about, the things that she had to go through. We all go through these things, and we think, why in the world are we doing this? So what happened is her father had divorced her mother and married a woman named Minnie. So Minnie was like the evil stepmother, apparently, in this story right here. And because of Minnie, then the financial access was cut off for her to go to school. So she did find a way anyway. Now, Dad never told why he divorced her real mother. So she gets contact again with the mother. Supposedly finds out her mother wasn't as bad as the dad said. That's why you always need to get two sides of a story. So we're talking about her moving into a town. She's the only female doctor. I'm pretty sure that was something over there as well. The only female physician in town, and it had to be difficult. So her biography notes Dr. Anderson was concerned with prostitutes working. Her only thing in life is she wanted to help people. Even if it was a prostitute, who cares? You're helping somebody. You're helping people. So over the next 3 years, Susan worked at building her business. Now, finally, one case established Susan's reputation as a trustworthy physician in Cripple Creek. So a local boy had accidentally blown up some dynamite, breaking several bones. So an attending surgeon wanted to amputate his arm, but Dr. Anderson insisted on thoroughly cleaning and dressing the wound first. The boy's arm was saved. This helped build her reputation, and more people began coming to Dr. Anderson. So within 2 years, she had repaid her college loans. Remember, she had to borrow money from a friend while she was going to college. Now, the year 1900 looked pretty promising. John had returned to Anaconda, where he worked as a miner at the famous John brother. He worked as a miner at the famed Mary McKinney mine close to town. So Susan was residing next to her office at a bimetallic block. Plans were underway for her to marry an unknown companion identified only as WR in her diary. So indeed, the future looked quite rosy. Then a mysterious turn of events. William and WR had a falling out, and Susan was left at the altar. Can you imagine this? Okay, so you're going to get married finally. You think you finally found the love of your dreams, and now you're left at the altar. So on March 12th, she sadly notes in her diary, pictures returned by WR. In her misery, Susan hardly noticed the condition of her brother. So John had been living at Bolton House, a boarding house located out across the valley from his father on Anaconda's main street. So just before Susan's prospective wedding, John had returned from a trip to California and caught the deadly influenza virus. By the time William and Minnie notified Susan of John's illness, he was delirious with pneumonia. So on March 16th, just a few days after the devastating end of her pending marriage, Susan's brother died at the tender age of 27. Susan's diary reads, "John buried today. He is gone from sight, but is not far away. Life seems so useless and vain. No one cares much whether I live or die. John was my best friend on earth, and now my best friend is in heaven." Susan is the only surviving family member noted in John's newspaper obituary. Now, William Anderson no doubt felt guilty over his eldest son's death. You think? He moved with Mary and their children to California. Before departing, he issued a final caucus command to Susan, forbidding her to stay in Cripple Creek. But Susan had already resolved to leave, traveling around Denver and working as a nurse in Greeley for 7 years. She eventually moved to the Grand Country, where she earned the nickname Doc Susie. Now let's talk about this for a minute. We've talked about all the devastating things that happened to her. Okay, so she's going to college. Rich dad cuts her off because of the stepmother, Minnie. But then she was rescued by a friend who she borrowed money to pay for her college. She moves to Cripple Creek. It's hard to say. So she moves there, and all kinds of other issues started coming up. Okay, so she gets a disease. She's sick. But this woman had to have the determination she was gritty. To have all this determination, all these bad things are happening. The only friend she had was her brother, who died and had TB. In the obituary, it mentioned Susie as being the only family member because Dad cut him off. She gets left at the altar by the only love she thought she had in her life, and she still goes on. She still makes it happen. So Doc Susie stayed in Grand County from 1909 to 1956. There she gained her rightful reputation as a qualified medical doctor. Now remember, she had to go back to being a nurse. So remember, William's brother, or the dad, William Anderson, maybe felt some guilt over his elder son's death, moved Minnie, the stepmother, and their children to California. Before departing, he issued a final command to Susan, forbidding her to stay in Cripple Creek. But Susan had already resolved to leave again, traveling around Denver and working as a nurse in Greeley, Greeley, for 7 years. You can imagine, okay, you're a doctor, so now you're a nurse for 7 years. Somehow she had to gain some experience working as a nurse. We always think, wait a minute, I'm regressing, I'm going back. But this proved to be very helpful to her for 7 years again as a nurse. So she eventually moved to Frazier, located to Grand County, where she served and earned the nickname Doc Susie. Okay, so again, she was in Grand County from 1906 to 1956. There she gained her rightful reputation as a qualified medical doctor. So friends, associates, and clients all came to love her. Although her father visited with her over the years, Minnie's absence is refreshingly noticeable in photographs marking the occasion. Perhaps William finally came to his senses and returned to the child he had come to mistreat in the years past. Sometimes people make up for it, sometimes they don't. Okay, so Dr. Susan Anderson died in Denver in 1960. She wanted to be buried next to her beloved brother John in the Mount Pisgah Cemetery, but the original family plot could not be located and Susan was buried elsewhere. Years later, the family plot was found. It's a gray marble pillar with the inscriptions of John, their grandfather, and a cousin of 3 on 4 sides. Upon its discovery, Susan's inscription was finally added. Dr. H. Susan Anderson, M.D., has 2 distinctions in Cripple Creek. She was the city's first female physician, and she is the only resident of Mount Pisgah Cemetery with actually 2 headstones. I want to go back and show you this video again. It's remarkable, and all the things that this lady accomplished with all the bad things that happened in her life. Let's watch.
Are you the doctor? Yes, ma'am. I just need a moment to think. Thank you, Doctor.
Quite the amazing life. So in another article I found, this is legendofamerica.com, we're talking about how Dr. Anderson moved to Denver but had a tough time securing patients as people were reluctant to see a woman doctor in those times. And many doctors were already established. So then she moved to Greeley, Colorado. The reason, and this is where she worked as a nurse for 6 years, during that time there she was diagnosed with TB, tuberculosis. Needing more cold and dry climate for the illness, this is when she decided to move to Fraser, Colorado in the year 1907. Now, the area was certainly cold and dry at the elevation of over 8,500 feet, so Susan was most concerned with controlling her disease and didn't open the practice or tell people that she was a doctor. She had to kind of keep that quiet. However, word soon got out, and the locals began asking her for her advice on various ailments, which soon led to her practicing her skills again. Her reputation spread as she treated families, ranchers, loggers, railroad workers, and even an occasional horse and cow. Remember, she got that early experience on the farm. It was not uncommon at the time, so most of her patients required her to make house calls, although she never owned a horse or a car. Instead, she dressed in layers, wore high-heeled boots, and she trekked through deep snows and freezing temperatures to reach her patients. During the many years that Doc Susie, quote, Doc Susie, which she became known as, very familiar, practiced in the high mountains of Grant County. One of her busiest times was during the influenza pandemic of 1918 and 1919. Like people worldwide, Fraser locals also became sick in great numbers, and Dr. Anderson found herself rushing from one deathbed to the next. Can you imagine how depressing that had to be? Another busy time for her was the 6-mile Moffat Tunnel, which began built through the Rocky Mountains. Not long after construction began, she found herself treating numerous men who were injured during construction. Not long after that, during this time she was also asked to become the Grant County coroner. This was a position that enabled her to confront the Tunnel Commission regarding working conditions and accidents. In the 5 years it took to complete the tunnel, there were an estimated 19 who died and hundreds who were injured. So I wanted to mention this as well. A lot of folks make a lot of money as their doctors, but unlike today's physicians, Susan Anderson never became rich practicing her skills, and she was often paid in firewood, food, services, and other items that could be bartered. Doc Susie continued to practice medicine in Fraser until 1956. She did die in Denver on April the 16th, 1960, and again was buried in Cripple Creek, Colorado. Man, what a hard time she had. A lot of things to overcome. This woman right here, I'm really glad I found this. I had never heard of her before. I hope this is an inspiration to you as well.